Pack your things and disappear before I return. She understands this world better than you ever could. To him, she was collateral damage, a liability he could erase with one phone call. Soft breathing and faint sob. He paraded his replacement through the streets of Little Italy, called her weak behind closed doors. He said he was consolidating power, that she was the mistake he should have never made. But while he was drinking wine in Sicilian villas, his wife was making calls of her own, to people who mattered, to people who remembered loyalty. Pack your things and disappear before I return. She understands this world better than you ever could, he said before boarding his private jet with his lover, not even giving his wife a second glance. To him, she was collateral damage and a liability, a woman he could erase from the family ledger with a single order. He flaunted pictures of expensive dinners and Mediterranean sunsets, called her pathetic to his inner circle. He told everyone he was consolidating his empire, that she was the chapter of weakness he should have never written. But while he was sipping Chianti on terraces overlooking the Amalfi Coast with his mistress, his wife was signing documents of her own, documents that would shake the foundation of everything he thought he controlled. So when he returned, arrogant, laughing hand in hand with the woman he replaced her with, he reached for the reinforced door to their brownstone, only to find his keycard had been deactivated. And what happened next wiped the smile off both their faces. Sometimes the people you cast aside are the ones who rewrite the power structure. And sometimes the empire you think you built alone was never really yours to begin with. Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request. Please subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be silenced and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from. Because together, we are not just telling stories, we are keeping hope alive. Isabella Romano learned to stop reacting to her husband's insults, not because they hurt less, but because showing pain in his world was a sign of weakness. And weakness got you buried. So when Dante called from downstairs, demanding to know why his suit wasn't pressed the way he liked it again, she answered calmly, even though her hands were shaking around the fabric. He always wanted sharp creases on his Italian wool suits. She always gave him sharp creases. Somehow, it was never enough. Dante walked into the bedroom with his usual dominance, the kind that came from controlling half the shipping routes on the eastern seaboard. His tailored jacket hung casually over his shoulder as if photographers were always following him. He scanned the room like he expected applause for simply existing. "Isabella, you used too much starch again," he said, flicking the collar of a charcoal dress shirt like it had personally insulted his authority. "It's the same amount as last time," she answered, folding the shirt carefully. "Last time it was acceptable. Today, it's wrong. Do you see the problem?" His voice sharpened on the last word, the same tone he used when questioning someone's loyalty before they disappeared. She nodded. That was the safest thing to do. Arguing only made him louder, and she didn't want the soldiers stationed outside hearing another argument through the reinforced walls. The Romanos lived in a fortress disguised as a Brooklyn brownstone, but the neighborhood was closer together than Dante liked to admit. His dream was a private compound in the Hamptons, but even Mafia bosses had to maintain appearances. She placed the shirt on the bed. "I'll redo it." He sighed as if her existence exhausted him. "Please do. I can't meet with the commission looking like I'm married to someone who doesn't understand respect." The word stung, but she didn't flinch. She waited until he walked into the closet before letting out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Isabella had been married to Dante Romano for 8 years. In the beginning, he had been magnetic, protective, commanding. Somewhere along the way, ambition turned into tyranny. The promotion to capo had changed him, but becoming boss had transformed him into someone unrecognizable. His family had been in the business for 4 generations, old money soaked in blood and tradition. Isabella didn't come from that world. Her father had been a legitimate businessman, her mother a schoolteacher. Dante never said it outright, but he reminded her in small ways, correcting how she spoke at family dinners, laughing when she didn't recognize the names of legendary capos, pointing out that she didn't understand the life the way born-in women did. His sister Lucia was the worst. Lucia never missed a chance to remind Isabella that she had married up, that she was an outsider who would never truly belong. Isabella had learned to swallow comments until they stopped choking her. That morning, Isabella felt Dante's mood shifting even before he grabbed his keys to the armored Mercedes. He kept checking his encrypted phone, smiling at messages he didn't explain. A tiny alarm bell rang in her chest, but she pushed it aside. She learned that questioning him only made him colder, more paranoid. As he finished getting ready, he talked about his upcoming trip to Sicily. Family business, he called it. Territory negotiations, old alliances that needed reinforcing. He spoke like he was orchestrating a political summit. She nodded through most of it, though one detail bothered her. He hadn't mentioned which families he was meeting. He always mentioned the families. When he left, flanked by 2 bodyguards, she sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the shirt she had ironed twice. Her reflection in the antique mirror looked tired, not physically worn out, just dimmer, like a light slowly losing power. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sophia, her closest friend and the only person in this world she trusted completely. "Coffee later? You sound stressed." Isabella typed back quickly. "Yes, please." She needed someone who didn't treat her like a liability, someone who asked questions without judgment, someone outside the family structure. She met Sophia at a small cafe in Carroll Gardens, far enough from Romano territory that no one would recognize her. The place smelled like espresso and fresh cannoli. The normalcy of it calmed her. "You look tense," Sophia said, stirring her macchiato. "Bad morning, same as always." Isabella tried to smile. Sophia groaned. "Let me guess, the shirt thing again?" Isabella shrugged. "It's not worth arguing about." Sophia leaned in. "Everything with him turns into not worth arguing. Why does he get to decide that?" Isabella didn't answer because that was easier than admitting the real reason. She had spent years shaping herself around his control, learning when to speak and when silence meant survival. Before she could change the subject, her phone buzzed again. "Dante." She braced herself. "Need the Navy suit ready tonight. Important meeting before I leave tomorrow. Don't disappoint me this time." She put the phone down quietly. Sophia watched her carefully. "You okay?" Isabella nodded, but her smile wobbled. "Let's talk about something else." They chatted about Sophia's restaurant, then recipes, then weekend plans that Isabella knew she'd never keep. It almost felt normal until Isabella checked the time and realized she needed to get home before Dante returned from his meeting with the underbosses. She hugged Sophia goodbye and headed toward the parking garage where one of Dante's drivers always waited. As she reached the black Escalade, a voice floated from behind the corner, a familiar voice, Dante's voice. She froze. He was around the corner, talking loudly on his phone. Isabella stepped quietly toward the sound, careful not to make noise. She wasn't the type to eavesdrop, but something in his tone sounded off. Cruel, even. Dismissive. "Man, she's lucky I kept her around this long," he said, laughing. Isabella's heart punched against her ribs. "You know how it is," Dante continued. "Some women serve a purpose because they're useful, plausible deniability, legitimate cover. Isabella's fine, I guess, but I'm done pretending she fits into my world. I need someone who actually understands power, who can navigate this life without embarrassing me at every turn." The laughter from the other end of the call echoed faintly. "Exactly," Dante said. "Upgrade season. Time to bring in someone who belongs." Isabella stepped back before her knees buckled. Upgrade season. He was talking about her like she was an outdated weapon, something he planned to replace as soon as the timing was right. She didn't cry. She didn't gasp. She just stood there, feeling something inside her go quiet, too quiet, dangerously quiet. Dante ended the call a moment later, unaware she was anywhere nearby. He walked to his armored car with a confident stride, adjusting his cufflinks as if he hadn't just gutted his wife with a few careless sentences. Isabella slid into the Escalade and stared at the leather seat in front of her. She felt the urge to scream, but the scream never came. Instead, she told the driver to take her home slowly, smoothly, like someone trying not to spill anything fragile. That evening, Dante came home in a strangely cheerful mood. He complained about traffic on the BQE, bragged about a successful negotiation with the Calabrian families, and ordered her to confirm his dinner reservation at Cipriani. Somewhere he wanted to be seen, somewhere powerful men gathered. Isabella nodded through all of it, hearing his earlier words on repeat. Upgrade season. She waited for a moment that felt safe enough to speak. What exactly is the trip for? Dante looked up sharply from his encrypted phone. Why? I want to know which families you'll be meeting, he smirked. Why? Worried I won't behave? Her stomach twisted. No, I just asked. Well, don't. His tone dropped into that dangerous register. If I wanted you involved in business, I'd bring you to the table. But you're not made for that table, Isabella. You never were. That was the end of the conversation. The next day, Lucia came over without warning. She never knocked. She acted as if Isabella lived in her brother's house, not her own. The brownstone had belonged to Isabella's grandfather, left to her when he died her, but Dante had slowly convinced her to put his name on the deed for legal protection. Lucia scanned Isabella's simple black dress with a look that was almost pitying. You're still dressing like a schoolteacher, Isabella. Isabella kept her voice steady. I'm not going on the trip. Obviously. Lucia waved her hand dismissively. Dante needs someone beside him who matches his position. You stand out for all the wrong reasons. The comment wasn't even subtle. It wasn't meant to be. Isabella held her breath for a second. He said it was business, not social. Lucia laughed lightly. Sweetheart, in our world, everything is social. Appearances matter. Dante needs a woman who commands respect, not someone who looks like she wandered in from a charity event. Dante entered the room, adjusting his platinum cufflinks. Talking about the trip? Lucia grinned. I told her it's better she stays home. She'd be a distraction around the real families. Isabella felt the words slice through her, but she kept her expression neutral. Dante didn't defend her. He didn't even blink. Instead, he nodded. Exactly. This trip isn't for outsiders. Isabella walked to the kitchen before either of them saw her blink too quickly. She stood in front of the marble counter and let the cold stones steady her. She didn't want this life to hurt as much as it did. Later that night, when the brownstone was quiet except for the hum of security cameras, she sat on the edge of the bed. Dante was packing. Expensive shoes, designer suits, his favorite Patek Philippe watch. He didn't ask if she wanted to join him. He didn't pretend anymore. Dante, she said quietly, are you sure I shouldn't go? He didn't look up. Positive, this trip is not your scene. She hesitated. Who will you be meeting? He zipped his leather suitcase and stood tall. I don't owe you a breakdown of family business. Just handle things here. Her chest tightened, but she didn't push. She just nodded. The next morning, she noticed something strange. He wasn't wearing his usual cologne, the one he wore for business meetings. He was wearing the one he reserved for nights out at exclusive clubs. He also shaved more carefully than usual, kept checking his phone with a private smile, and his suitcase looked too light for a 10-day business trip. At first, she ignored it. Then she saw the printed boarding passes on the console table near the door. 2 first-class tickets to Sicily, marked for a boutique resort overlooking the coast. Not a business hotel, not a family compound. A romantic getaway package for 2. And the second ticket didn't have her name on it. It had Valentina Corsini. Her hands shook as she held the papers. Valentina, the daughter of the Corsini family, a powerful bloodline with connections to every major organization in Europe. The woman Dante once described as just networking. The woman Lucia followed obsessively on social media, but Isabella wasn't allowed to mention. The woman who appeared in photographs at charity galas, standing just a little too close to Dante. The truth slammed into her so hard she had to sit down. He wasn't consolidating power. He was consolidating his future, and she wasn't part of it. Isabella folded the boarding passes neatly, walked to the bedroom, and placed them on top of his suitcase. She didn't say a word. When he came downstairs, he didn't even check her face for emotion. He didn't care. He just grabbed his luggage and said, "Let's go. I don't want to miss the flight." She drove him to the private terminal at Teterboro Airport because he expected it, because he liked arriving like royalty, flanked by soldiers who treated him like a king. Outside the terminal, he grabbed his luggage and turned to her with chilling certainty. "Pack your things and disappear before I return. She understands this world better than you ever could. This brownstone, this life, it was never meant for someone like you." He didn't give her time to respond. He didn't even look at her. He said it like a boss issuing orders to an expendable soldier. He walked away, boarded the jet with Valentina on his arm, and never once checked whether Isabella was still standing there. She wasn't. She didn't stay to watch him leave. She drove back to Brooklyn in silence, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles ached. Her world wasn't just shifting, it was collapsing. But somewhere inside the collapse, something else formed. Not rage, not fear, something sharper, something colder. By the time she pulled into the secured garage beneath the brownstone, she knew she wasn't going to break down. Not this time. She grabbed her purse, walked inside, and made a call she never imagined she'd dial. Her lawyer's office, the one lawyer Dante didn't control, the one her grandfather had trusted before the Romanos ever entered her life. "Hi," she said. "I need to discuss something urgent. It involves property and family business, but I need absolute discretion." The lawyer could see her that afternoon. Isabella dressed simply, tied her hair back, and drove to the office in Manhattan, far from Brooklyn, far from Romano eyes. The meeting lasted 2 hours. She spoke carefully, methodically. The lawyer listened with growing concern, taking notes, asking pointed questions about ownership, deeds, signatures. Papers were drawn up, options were laid out, legal protections were explained. When she left the office, she didn't cry. She didn't smile either. She just felt awake, more awake than she'd been in 8 years. She drove back to Brooklyn, walked to the kitchen table, and unfolded the folder she had been given. Her hand hovered over the signature line. Transferring ownership of the brownstone wasn't revenge. It was survival. It was reclaiming what had been hers before Dante Romano ever walked into her life. The property her grandfather built, the sanctuary Dante turned into a gilded cage. She picked up the pen. She signed. And somewhere thousands of miles away, Dante raised a glass of Barolo to a future he thought he controlled. When Isabella finished signing, the lawyer slid the documents back into a leather portfolio and tapped the corner twice, sealing the moment. "I'll process everything today," he said. "The buyer wired the deposit an hour ago, so the sale is already active. Once the final confirmation comes in, the property will legally transfer without delay." Isabella nodded, though her pulse throbbed in her ears. "So it's done. It's binding," he said. "Unless you decide otherwise, but only you, not your husband. The property was legally yours from your grandfather's estate. Mr. Romano's name was added later, but your signature carries sole authority for major decisions like this." That mattered more than she expected it to. For years, decisions had been made around her, over her, through her. Now she had made one that couldn't be undone by anyone but her. The lawyer hesitated as she stood. "Are you sure you're okay, Isabella?" She didn't trust her voice, so she just offered a small, steady nod. He didn't push her. He handed her a final set of temporary access codes. The buyer requested she maintain entry until the official closing. They were written on plain paper, simple alphanumeric sequences instead of the biometric keys Dante had installed. But holding them felt like holding the last piece of a life she was choosing to walk away from. When Isabella stepped out of the office building, the late afternoon sun hit her in a warm flash. She blinked against it, feeling strangely exposed in the light. Cars passed, people hurried across the sidewalks, and the whole world looked unaware that her life had just been split clean down the middle. She walked slowly to her car, not because she was unsure, she wasn't, but because the finality of it all held a kind of weight she needed to adjust to. The codes felt cool in her hand, grounding her. Her phone buzzed. A message from Dante landed. "Won't have service for a bit. Handle things. No thank you, no love you. Not even her name, just another order." She stared at the text longer than necessary, then locked her phone and placed it face down on the passenger seat. Her hands were steady now, too steady. On the drive home, the city blurred past the windows. Her thoughts formed and reformed, not chaotic, focused. Dante had told her to pack her things and disappear. He expected to come home to a clean victory, a quiet exit, a wife willing to vanish just because he decided he was done. He'd never imagined she might choose something else, something for herself. When she reached Brooklyn, she slowed the car as she approached the familiar curve of the street. The brownstone stood exactly as it always did, Red brick facade, wrought iron gates, the security cameras Dante installed after his promotion. Nothing about it looked different from the outside. But everything about it had changed. She parked in the garage and sat for a moment, watching the reinforced door that led into the house. She could still see the past 8 years inside that brownstone. The family dinners where she bit her tongue, the arguments that ended with slammed doors, the holidays she tried to make warm even when he made her feel small. The nights he came home late with explanations that crumbled as soon as she asked a quiet question. Her life was in that house. Her freedom was in the paper she had just signed. When she finally stepped out of the car, the air felt lighter than it had that morning. She walked up the interior stairs to the main level. The marble floors gleamed beneath her feet. And for the first time she didn't wince at the coldness of them. Soon it wouldn't be her problem anymore. Soon it wouldn't be her burden. Inside, the brownstone felt quieter than usual. Not empty. Paused, as if the walls were waiting to see what she would do next. Isabella carried the folder to the dining table, set it down, and placed the access codes on top. She didn't need to look through the documents again. She knew what she signed. Her phone buzzed once more. This time, it was Lucia. Dante says you're still moping around. Don't make things difficult. Pack your stuff. He'll handle the rest. Isabella let the message sit unread on the lock screen. There was a time she might have answered out of politeness or fear or habit. That time was done. She walked through the living room, touching the back of the leather couch, the corner of the mahogany bookshelf, the edge of the bulletproof window frame. She wasn't grieving the brownstone. She was acknowledging it, saying goodbye, but not in the way Dante expected. He thought he had written her ending. He had no idea she'd already started a different chapter. She checked the clock. The buyer's confirmation should arrive soon. Once that happened, the sale would move to final processing without delay. Dante wouldn't know until it was too late. He'd come home to a door that didn't recognize his biometrics, a property that didn't belong to him, and a life that no longer centered around his commands. For a moment, she wondered what his face would look like when he realized. Then she pushed the thought aside. She didn't want revenge to be her focus. She wanted her future to be her focus. Still, the image lingered. The doorbell rang, not loud but sudden enough to make her jump. She hadn't expected anyone. When she opened it, an envelope rested on the doorstep. No delivery person in sight. She picked it up and saw the buyer's seal stamped on it. Inside was a simple note. Deposit received, sale confirmed. You made the right choice. Possession transfers when he returns. Isabella read it twice, her breath catching as she realized the buyer somehow knew the timing of Dante's trip without her ever mentioning his return date. She folded the note carefully, slid it back into the envelope, and tucked it into her purse. Then she walked back inside, feeling the evening breeze brush against her as she closed the door behind her. In her mind, a symbolic click, sharp and final. She looked down at the codes in her hand. He told me to disappear. She whispered to herself, voice calm. So I'm making sure he has nothing to come home to. And with that, the smallest smile touched her lips. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give a future to children and women who have been abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing and turning on your notification bell so you never miss a story that matters. Also, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from, and how did this story speak to you? Isabella woke to the sound of her phone vibrating non-stop on the nightstand. For a second, she hoped it was a mistake, maybe a reminder she'd forgotten to turn off. But when she picked it up, the notifications kept pouring in. Dante had posted again, and again, and again. She opened the first notification. A photo filled the screen. Dante on a yacht deck, sunglasses on, holding a glass of champagne with the Sicilian coastline in the background. Valentina leaned into him, her head on his shoulder, her smile practiced and wide. The caption read, "Upgrade complete." Isabella felt her stomach twist, but she kept scrolling. Another photo showed Valentina kissing his cheek against a sunset backdrop. The caption said, "Some women know how to navigate power. Finally found my match." The comments underneath were worse. Laughing emojis. "About time, boss. She was holding you back. Real recognizes real. One comment stood out because it came from someone she knew. Told you she'd melt down when she sees this. Isabella set the phone down slowly, like she was placing something sharp on the counter. Her chest felt tight, but she didn't cry. Not after everything she'd already signed away. Not after everything she'd already decided. She went to the kitchen to make coffee, focusing on the simple steps. Scoop, pour, wait. The steady rhythm kept her grounded. She had just taken her first sip when someone pounded on the front door, hard enough to rattle the reinforced frame. Only one person knocked like that. Isabella opened it and found Lucia standing there, phone in hand, eyes blazing with dramatic outrage. She didn't wait to be invited in. She pushed past Isabella and marched straight into the living room. "What did you do?" Lucia demanded, spinning around to face her. Isabella blinked. "Excuse me?" "Don't act confused." Lucia shoved her phone in Isabella's face. "Dante is furious. You're making things harder for him." Isabella stared at her. "I haven't spoken to him since he left." "Exactly," Lucia snapped. "You're supposed to be gone. He told you that. And clearly you haven't moved. You're still here, clinging, hanging around, ruining his fresh start." Isabella folded her arms. "I'm not ruining anything. He's on vacation." Lucia's eyes narrowed. "It's not a vacation. It's a transition, and you being here is holding him back. He said he doesn't want to come home to this burden." Burden. The word stung more because she had heard it before, from Dante, whispered at a family dinner she wasn't supposed to overhear. Lucia's voice sharpened. "You need to pack your things and go. Today." Isabella met her gaze calmly. "This is still my property." Lucia scoffed. "For now." Those two words hung in the air for a long beat. Isabella watched Lucia carefully, wondering how much she knew, or thought she knew. Did she have any idea what Isabella had signed yesterday? Any idea what was already shifting beneath their feet? Probably not. Lucia was too sure of herself to imagine anything outside her control. "I'll move out when I'm ready," Isabella said. "No," Lucia said, stepping closer. "You'll move out when Dante wants you to." Something inside Isabella, something that had been bruised and patient for years, finally steadied with a quiet, unbreakable firmness. She shook her head. "Not anymore." Lucia's expression faltered just for a second. She seemed genuinely thrown off, as if she had never heard Isabella say no to anything in her life. That made Isabella feel stronger, even if only a little. Lucia rolled her eyes. "This attitude is exactly why he's replacing you." Isabella didn't respond. She didn't need to. Lucia was already storming toward the door. "When he gets back, you won't like how this ends," she warned. "But that's on you." The door slammed behind her, and silence filled the brownstone again. Isabella exhaled slowly. She wasn't shaken, not the way she used to be. She expected the backlash, but feeling it hit her directly was still a shock. She went back to the kitchen, set her coffee down, and leaned on the counter. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Sophia. Isabella hesitated before answering. "Hey," Sophia's voice came through, soft but tense. "I saw the posts. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Isabella said, even though she wasn't. But she appreciated that Sophia asked gently, not accusingly like the others. "Listen," Sophia said. "I need to tell you something, and you're going to be mad." Isabella straightened. "What is it?" Sophia sighed deeply. "I knew about Valentina for a while." Everything inside Isabella went still. "How long?" "Months," Sophia admitted. "I didn't know the full details, but I saw them together once at a restaurant in Manhattan. Then I overheard some things from people in the neighborhood. I wasn't sure how to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you." Isabella's throat tightened. "But you didn't tell me at all." "I'm sorry," Sophia said, voice cracking. "You were already struggling, and I thought maybe he'd stop on his own. I told myself it wasn't my place. I'm sorry, Isa." Isabella closed her eyes. Hearing it from her best friend hurt in a different way, quiet and deep, like a bruise blooming beneath the skin. "You should have told me," Isabella whispered. "I know," Sophia said. "I messed up. I was trying to protect you, but I made it worse." Isabella didn't know what to say. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She just felt something heavy settle in her chest, like another piece of her life shifting out of place. "I need some time," she finally said. Sophia didn't argue. "Okay, I understand." They hung up, and Isabella stared at the quiet phone. It felt like everyone in her life had known parts of the truth except her. They made decisions about what she could handle, what she should hear, what she should be shielded from, as if she were fragile glass instead of a person with the right to know her own life. Her fingers shook slightly, but she pulled herself together. She still had things to do. She still had a plan, even if it wasn't fully formed yet. She walked to the small desk in the corner and opened her laptop. Bills, statements, emails. She clicked through everything slowly, methodically. When she opened the joint account, the one Dante insisted they share for transparency, her breath caught. The balance was wrong. Very wrong. She clicked through the transaction history, her heart pounding as she scrolled. Expensive restaurants, luxury boutiques, hotel bookings in Manhattan and Sicily, all charged to their joint account. All in the last year, all matching the timeline of Valentina entering Dante's life. He had drained their savings. Every month, a little more disappeared. Sometimes a few $1,000s, sometimes tens of thousands, and all of it used to fund Valentina's lifestyle. Her designer bags, her five-star dinners, her weekend trips to Miami and the Hamptons. Isabella covered her mouth with her hand. She felt sick, betrayed in a way that burned deeper than infidelity. He hadn't just replaced her emotionally. He had stripped her life down financially, preparing her to fail. The brownstone, her inheritance, the one thing he couldn't touch without her signature. Now she knew why he wanted her gone so fast, why he didn't care if she cried or fought or begged. He wanted her out so he could try to claim what was left, but she had already sold it. She closed the laptop slowly, steadying her breathing. Everything made sense now. Every insult, every cut, every sudden change in attitude. He wasn't just replacing her emotionally, he was replacing her financially too. Erasing her from their shared life, one transaction at a time. She pressed her hand against the table to steady herself. She wasn't done yet. She had more choices to make, more truths to uncover. But the brownstone was hers, and selling it wasn't just retaliation. It was survival. Isabella shut her laptop and sat there for a long moment, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the wall clock, the stillness around her. The brownstone felt different now, not empty, charged, like it understood something she hadn't allowed herself to admit until today. This place wasn't just walls and floors. It was the last piece of her life Dante hadn't already taken, and he had been coming for it. Quietly, slowly, like someone stripping parts from a machine until it couldn't function anymore. She needed air. She stepped outside into the small courtyard behind the brownstone and sat on the stone bench, pulling her knees close. The afternoon sun warmed her skin, but her hands felt cold. She was still trying to absorb everything when her phone buzzed with a new message. Unknown number. We need to schedule the inspection sooner than expected. Her breath hitched. The buyer. She stared at the message, unsure if she was ready to deal with whatever came next, but she typed back, when? The reply came almost instantly. Tomorrow, early morning, she swallowed. That was soon. Too soon. But maybe that was a good thing. She wanted things to move forward, she needed them to. Okay. I'll be here. One more message arrived. One more condition. No one else can be present. Not friends, not family. A prickle ran up her spine. The wording wasn't threatening, but it wasn't casual either. It felt intentional, like the buyer understood exactly how messy things were in her life and wanted no outsiders involved. She typed back, understood. She put her phone down beside her and stared out across the small courtyard. The quiet felt sharper, heavier. She didn't know who the buyer was or why they were so invested, but the unease lingered like a shadow she couldn't shake. When she went back inside, she forced herself to clean a little, folding blankets, picking up stray items, wiping down counters. She wasn't preparing the brownstone for the inspection as much as she was trying to keep her mind from spiraling. Around 5, her phone rang. She saw the caller ID and felt her stomach drop. Her part-time consulting firm, the one legitimate income she had that wasn't connected to Dante. She almost didn't answer, but she needed that income more than ever now, at least until the sale went through. Hi, this is Isabella. Her supervisor cleared her throat on the other end. Isabella, I'm afraid I have bad news. The firm is restructuring, and we have to let some consultants go. Today will be your last official day. Isabella froze. I don't understand. Why me? We're downsizing, her supervisor said gently. I'm so sorry. But something in her tone felt off. Staged, practiced. Isabella pushed back a little. Is this really about restructuring, or did someone say something? There was a long silence. Then quietly, I was asked not to comment further. Isabella's heart sank. There was only one person who cared enough to meddle and cruel enough to do it without blinking. Lucia. I see, Isabella whispered. Again, I'm very sorry, her supervisor said. If I could change it, I would. Isabella thanked her and hung up. She sat down slowly, trying to understand how far Lucia was willing to go to force her out of the brownstone, out of Dante's life, out of everything. Losing the job didn't break her. It clarified things. Whatever sympathy she'd held for Dante's family evaporated completely. They weren't trying to help him. They were trying to erase her. She walked back into the living room, running her hand along the wall absent-mindedly. Years ago, Dante had stood beside her in this same room and told her this brownstone would be their foundation, their legacy, their sanctuary. He never acknowledged that it had been her inheritance that secured it, her grandfather's last gift, her past, her sacrifice. He rewrote the story until he believed he had built everything himself. But the truth stood here in brick and mortar and memories. It was hers. Selling it wasn't revenge. It was reclaiming something he tried to steal. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Sophia. Can we talk, please? Isabella hesitated, her chest tightening, remembering Sophia admitting she'd known about the affair for months. She still cared for her friend, but trust wasn't something she could hand out freely anymore. She typed back, not right now. I need space. 3 dots appeared, vanished, reappeared. Then Sophia sent one last message. I'm here when you're ready. Isabella didn't answer. Not yet. Everything in her life was shifting, and she needed to stabilize her own footing before reaching for anyone else's. She made a simple dinner, pasta with olive oil and garlic, and ate standing at the counter. The silence had weight, but it didn't scare her. She'd lived with louder things. Dante's criticism, Lucia's belittling, the whisper of Valentina's name in places it didn't belong. She cleaned the dishes, dried her hands, and checked the time. Almost 9. The brownstone inspection would be early. She needed to be ready. Before bed, she walked through every room, turning off lights, touching doorknobs, making sure windows were locked. Not out of fear, out of habit, out of something familiar in a day full of unfamiliar twists. She climbed into bed and stared at the ceiling. She could still hear the words Sophia had said. I knew about Valentina for months. She forced those thoughts away and focused on breathing, slow, steady, controlled. Eventually she drifted into sleep. The next morning she woke early and cleaned again. Even though the brownstone didn't need it, she wanted everything to look orderly for the inspection. She wanted the buyer to see she was someone who respected her space, even if Dante never had. At 8:15 her phone buzzed. Arriving shortly. She glanced out the window, expecting to see a car pull up, but the street remained quiet. The minutes stretched, 10 passed, then 15. She began to wonder if the buyer had changed their mind when a soft knock sounded at the front door. She opened it, expecting a clipboard, maybe a suited lawyer or real estate agent. Instead, the doorstep was empty. No one there. But an envelope sat on the doormat, identical to the one left the day before. Isabella bent down, picked it up, and opened it. Inside was only one line. I prefer discretion. The inspection is complete. She stared at the words, confused, scanning the brownstone around her. Nothing seemed touched. Nothing seemed moved. Her phone rang suddenly, making her jump. The same unknown number lit up the screen. She answered with a hesitant, hello. The buyer's voice came through, low and calm, almost gentle but unmistakably firm. Isabella Romano, the voice said. The sale is finalized. I'll take possession the day your husband returns. Isabella froze. She hadn't told the buyer when he was returning. She hadn't told anyone except the lawyer. Her breath caught. How do you? But the line clicked off before she could finish. She lowered the phone slowly, realization washing over her like a cold wave. The buyer knew more about her life than she had ever revealed. And that meant her next steps weren't just about survival. They were about finding out who exactly had stepped into the shadows of her story. She stood there in the quiet brownstone, heart pounding, the phone still in her hand. Isabella woke before the sun, her body alert in a way that didn't feel natural. She lay still for a moment, listening to the quiet brownstone, waiting for the source of her anxiety to become clear. It didn't take long. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. The message was from Dante. landing early, be home before noon, be gone before I get there. She sat up so fast the blanket slid off her legs. Noon. It was barely 6. She had 6 hours, maybe less, to clear out what remained of her personal belongings. A few boxes in the closet, her paperwork, a suitcase of clothes. She thought she had more time to pack. Her chest tightened as she got out of bed. She didn't fear him coming home. Not exactly. She feared what he would do if he saw she was still there. And she feared what he would do once he realized the brownstone he believed belonged to him was already sold. She moved through the house quickly, collecting the last of her belongings, a small stack of books, her mother's necklace, old letters she kept in a shoebox under the bed. She carried each item as if it had weight far beyond the physical. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Sophia. "Hey, Lucia called me. Dante's coming back early. You need to leave that brownstone today." Isabella closed her eyes. The pressure behind them ached. She typed back, "I know, I'm packing." Before she could put the phone down, another message appeared. "I'm coming over." Isabella froze. She wasn't sure she wanted Sophia here. Not after the confession about Valentina. Not after days of silence. But she also didn't want to fight. "Okay," she wrote. When Sophia arrived 20 minutes later, her expression was tight, almost anxious. She closed the door behind her and spoke quietly. "Isabella, you can't stay here when he gets home." "I'm not planning to," Isabella said, taping a box shut. Sophia wrung her hands. "No, I mean, you can't fight him. You can't push back. Lucia said he's furious. She said he found out you're not leaving quickly enough." Isabella didn't look up. She placed a sweater into a suitcase. "Lucia has a lot of opinions." "This isn't just an opinion," Sophia insisted. "She said Dante is ready to get lawyers involved. She said if you make this ugly, you'll lose everything." Isabella paused, fingers resting on the zipper of the suitcase. "Lose everything?" "Sophia, I already lost almost everything, and not because of a fight I started." Sophia stepped closer. "I'm telling you this because I care about you. If you push him, he'll destroy you. I think you should leave the brownstone today before he gets back." Isabella straightened slowly. "Are you taking Lucia's side?" Sophia's face fell. "I'm taking your side. I'm trying to protect you." "By telling me to run?" Isabella asked quietly. Sophia didn't answer. "When you found out he was cheating, you didn't tell me," Isabella continued. "Now that I'm finally trying to stand on my own feet, you tell me to fall back down." "That's not what I'm saying," Sophia whispered. But the truth was already clear. Sophia didn't believe Isabella could win. She didn't believe Isabella could save herself. She believed Dante's power mattered more than Isabella's right to fight for her life. "Thank you," Isabella said softly, picking up another box. "But I'll handle this myself." Sophia stared at her for another long moment, then nodded weakly. "Okay. I hope you know what you're doing." She left the brownstone quietly, the door closing with a soft click that echoed louder than any slam. The silence that followed was heavy. Isabella tried to shake it off, returning to her packing, but her hands were trembling now. Not from fear, something different, something like clarity. She didn't want friends who only stood beside her when it was easy. She packed faster, harder, determined, focused. By mid-morning, she had moved most of her belongings into her car. Only paperwork remained, files she kept in a drawer of the old wooden desk in the living room. She knelt down, pulling the drawer open. Something inside caught her eye. An envelope she didn't recognize. Thick, sealed, her name written in Dante's handwriting on the front, but slanted in a way that didn't look natural, almost rehearsed. She frowned and opened it. Inside was a copy of the brownstone deed, except the deed didn't look like the original she remembered. This one listed Dante Romano as the sole owner. Her name wasn't there. Isabella felt the air leave her lungs. She checked the date. 7 months ago. 7 months ago, when he told her he had taken care of the paperwork during refinancing, when he insisted she didn't need to sign anything because it was routine, when she had trusted him to handle it because she thought marriage meant shared responsibilities, not secret betrayals. She flipped the page over. Her signature was on the line marked spouse, except it wasn't hers, not even close. It was forged. Her hands shook violently now, enough that the paper rustled. He had taken her name off the deed months ago, quietly, intentionally, all while draining their accounts and preparing his life with Valentina. He had planned everything. Her exit, her downfall, Her silence. She didn't just sell her brownstone, she sold his crime. Isabella dropped into the nearest chair, gripping the papers so tightly they bent at the edges. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears. This wasn't just betrayal. This was identity theft, forgery, criminal fraud. Her phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. Everything you found is real. Her hands went cold. Another message followed. Don't run. Don't give in. Hold your ground. She grabbed the phone and typed back quickly. How do you know what I found? No reply. She waited, heart pounding. Then one more message appeared, brief but terrifying in its accuracy. Because Dante has been hiding things from you for a long time, and this is only the beginning. Isabella felt the room tilt. She clutched the desk edge to steady herself. The beginning of what? She typed the words, but before she could hit send, her phone buzzed again, this time with a call. Unknown number. Her hesitation lasted only a breath. She answered. A calm voice spoke on the other end, low, certain, without panic. You're safe, the buyer said. Everything he forged, everything he stole, everything he hid, you'll receive the full documentation soon. Stay where you are, don't leave the brownstone yet. Isabella's voice trembled. Why are you helping me? A pause, because you're not the only one he wronged. Before she could ask more, the line went dead. Her knees buckled, and she sank to the floor, clutching her phone to her chest. She wasn't alone in this. Someone knew everything more than she did. Someone had been watching, waiting, preparing. But who and why? She didn't have time to think. She didn't have time to breathe. A car engine rumbled in the distance. Her stomach dropped. No, not yet. It's too early. She scrambled to her feet and hurried to the window, brushing aside the curtain. A black armored sedan turned onto the street. Her heart slammed against her ribs. It was Dante. Isabella stumbled back from the window, her breath coming fast and uneven. Dante's car crawled down the street like a predator closing in on prey. The tires crackled over the pavement. The engine shut off with a low growl. A car door slammed, too soon. She wasn't ready. She had papers scattered on the desk, her suitcase half-zipped, boxes still by the hallway. She couldn't hide the fact that she was packing, yet she didn't want him to see it either. Not like this. Not before she knew what the buyer meant. Not before she understood the danger. She scanned the room quickly, her hands shaking. She grabbed the deed copies, the forged signature burned in her vision, and shoved them into her purse. Her fingers closed the zipper just as footsteps crunched on the walkway outside. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. A new message. Don't open the door. Isabella froze. She didn't even have time to respond before a familiar voice boomed from the porch. Isabella, open up. His tone wasn't curious or confused. It was commanding, as if the brownstone, the door, the air, everything belonged to him. Isabella pressed her back against the wall, gripping her purse like a lifeline. Isa, I know you're in there. She didn't answer. She didn't move. She barely breathed. Dante jiggled the handle. Why is this locked? You never lock this. She had. For the first time in years, she had activated the manual deadbolt instead of relying on the biometric system. Her chest tightened. From behind Dante, another voice chimed in, bright, annoyed, unmistakably Valentina's. Maybe she finally got the hint. Honestly, she should have been gone already. Isabella squeezed her eyes shut. Valentina's voice had the same effect as touching a bruise, instant pain, deep and familiar. Isabella, Dante shouted again. Open the door right now. We need to talk. No, they didn't, not on his terms. She took a step back from the door, then another, keeping her eyes fixed on the handle. Every sound felt too loud, the wind, the footsteps, the pounding in her ears. She whispered under her breath, Please don't turn, please don't turn. A beat of silence fell outside. Then she heard the metallic scrape. Dante was inserting his keycard. Isabella felt her entire body tense. Her hands flew to her mouth, fighting the urge to cry out. He swiped the card. The reader beeped, red light, access denied, a sharper swipe. Harder. Another beep. Red light again. Nothing. What the? Dante muttered. Valentina let out a cold laugh. Did she seriously deactivate your access? Shut up, Dante snapped, swiping the card again with more force. Red light. Denied. Isabella backed farther into the hallway, her pulse hammering. She could feel the moment crashing toward her, the inevitable collision of every lie, every betrayal, every truth she had quietly uncovered. Another hard swipe, a sharp thunk. No give. Dante growled in frustration. Why the hell doesn't my card work? He slammed his palm against the door so hard the wood shook. Isabella flinched. "Isabella," he shouted, voice rising. "Open this damn door." Isabella clutched her purse tighter, feeling the documents inside pressing against her fingers. The forged deed, the truth about the accounts, the buyer's warnings, the weight of everything she had never meant to discover. All of it rested against her ribs. She wasn't just hiding from a man, she was hiding from a storm she had unknowingly triggered. Valentina's footsteps tapped lightly on the porch. "Just break it. It's still your brownstone." Another blow hit the door, harder this time. Isabella flinched again. It wasn't his brownstone. It was no one's brownstone now, not until the buyer took possession. If Dante forced his way inside, everything would unravel. The sale, the documents, the proof of his crimes, everything the buyer had promised to help her expose. Isabella's breath trembled. She realized something in that moment, something terrifying and empowering all at once. She had to reveal the truth. Not later, not soon. Now. Another slam. The door frame shuddered. "Isabella!" Dante roared. "Open this door before I—" He didn't finish the sentence. Maybe he didn't need to. Maybe she already knew exactly how he intended to end it. Her phone buzzed in her pocket again. A new message. "Now, Isabella. Tell him he doesn't live there anymore." Her knees weakened, her throat tightened, but she straightened her back, her fingers trembling as she reached for the handle, because she finally understood what was at stake. If she didn't speak now, she would lose everything. She placed her hand on the cool metal, inhaled once, and prepared to face him. Dante slammed the door again. "Why the hell doesn't my key work?" He screamed. And Isabella realized she had no choice but to answer. Isabella steadied her breath, fingers curled tightly around the handle. On the other side, Dante's anger shook the reinforced door with every pound. Valentina muttered complaints under her breath, pacing like a restless spectator waiting for a show to begin. Isabella swallowed hard. She wasn't the same woman who begged for his patience. She wasn't the quiet shadow he used to shove aside. She had documents. She had proof. She had the truth. Finally, she unlocked the deadbolt. The click sounded louder than a gunshot. Dante slammed the door again. "Isabella, I swear to." She pulled it open. His hand was raised mid-pound. He froze at the sight of her standing there, calm but unyielding, her purse slung over her shoulder as if she were the one coming home and he was the one trespassing. "What did you do to my—" He started, then stopped, confused. "Why didn't my keycard work?" "Because it's not your door anymore," Isabella said quietly. He blinked, stunned for half a second, then scoffed. "Don't play games. Move. I'm coming inside." He tried to shoulder past her. She stepped into the doorway, blocking him. "Dante," she said, steady but trembling inside. "This isn't your brownstone." His expression cracked. 1 second confusion, the next boiling offense. "Excuse me? You don't own this place. Not anymore." Valentina pushed forward, arms crossed, frustration written all over her face. "Can you just let him inside? This is ridiculous." Isabella met her gaze. "No." Dante's jaw tightened. "Isabella, move. Now." "I can't," she said. "And it wouldn't matter if I did, because your key card will never work here again." Valentina snorted. "You changed the codes? How pathetic." Isabella reached into her purse and pulled out the stack of papers, the ones the buyer had sent her, the ones she'd printed, the ones she barely slept after reading. She held them against her chest with both hands. "Dante," she said, voice quiet but sharp. "I sold the brownstone." The entire porch went still. For a split second, Dante's face emptied, then flushed red with a fury she had never seen from him, even at his worst. "You what?" "You told me to pack and disappear," Isabella said, "so I made sure you'd have nothing to come home to." "You can't sell my brownstone," he roared. Isabella lifted a single sheet, his forged deed. "Your brownstone? You forged my signature to make it yours. But you didn't count on something." His face paled. "You didn't count on the sale exposing everything you did." Valentina stepped back slightly, eyes flicking between them. "Wait, what is she talking about?" Isabella didn't look at her. She kept her eyes on Dante, watching the cracks spread across his expression. "You have no proof," he spat. "None of that will hold up. You've always been dramatic, but this is insane, Isabella." "You want proof?" A voice called out behind him. Dante froze. Isabella felt the air shift before she saw him. A man in a dark coat stepped onto the walkway, shoulders broad, posture confident, expression unreadable. His stride was calm, measured, almost annoyingly controlled. He wasn't someone who rushed. He didn't need to. "Hello, Dante," the man said. Dante turned slowly, like someone realizing they were standing in a trap they had built for someone else. "Marco," Dante said, voice cracking in disbelief. "What the hell are you doing here?" Marco DeLuca stopped 3 steps from the porch. His presence carried weight, not loud, not aggressive, but decisive. The kind of weight that came from knowing things others wanted buried. Valentina whispered, "Who is this?" Dante ignored her. Eyes locked on his former mentor and rival, the man he had betrayed to secure his position as boss. "Why are you here? How do you? It can't be you." Marco almost smiled. "You always were predictable." Isabella watched the scene unfold with a strange, almost distant clarity. She knew the name. Everyone in Dante's circle did. Marco DeLuca was the underboss Dante had framed years ago, feeding false information to rival families, planting evidence, orchestrating Marco's exile from the organization. She didn't know Marco had survived. She didn't know he'd been watching. Valentina's face drained of color. She stepped away from Dante as if stepping away from a burning building. Isabella watched Dante's mouth open and close like a man drowning in air. She took a small step forward, lifting her own final folder from her purse, and with her heartbeat pounding, she whispered, "There's more." Dante snapped toward her, eyes desperate, furious, terrified. "What more?" he hissed. Isabella swallowed, her fingers brushing the edge of the paper he never meant her to find again. The counseling confession. The one he wrote in shame and anger. The one he thought she destroyed. But she hadn't. She held it now. And Dante's face broke when he recognized the envelope. Dante stared at the envelope in Isabella's hand as if it were a weapon. Maybe it was. His face tightened, then loosened, then tightened again, trying to find an expression he could control. He failed. "Isabella," he said quietly, voice strained, "you don't want to open old wounds." She held the envelope tighter. "You wrote this." "That was during a difficult time," he snapped. "Therapy makes people say things they don't mean." "You didn't say them," she said. "You wrote them, in your own handwriting. You signed it. You admitted everything." Valentina's gaze darted between them. "Admitted what?" Isabella pulled out the folded paper. The edges were worn from the years she kept it hidden in the back of a drawer, telling herself it wasn't worth using, that she could forgive, that maybe he would change. "Dante admitted," Isabella said softly, unfolding the document, "that he had been unfaithful, that he lied about money, that he hid purchases from me, that he didn't think I'd ever leave because I was, in his exact words." She pointed to the underlined line. Too afraid to start over alone, Dante lunged for the paper. "Give me that." Marco stepped between them, firm and calm. "Don't." Dante froze, breathing hard. Isabella continued, her voice steadier now. "You wrote this during marriage counseling. You never apologized for any of it. You stormed out, said the therapist was biased, and told me never to bring it up again." Dante glared at her. "I thought you threw that away." "You thought wrong." Valentina took a step back from him, her arms folding across her chest. "You never told me you were in marriage counseling. You said you ended things because she was unstable." Isabella shook her head once. "I wasn't unstable. I was exhausted." Valentina's face tightened. She took another step away. "Wait, did you actually do all of this?" Dante sputtered. "She's twisting." Marco cut in with a tone that ended the argument. "It's all documented. It'll hold up in federal court." The color drained from Dante's face. Valentina didn't hesitate. "You said your money problems were because of her. You said she controlled you. You said she was." She stopped herself, shaking her head. "I can't be involved in this. I barely know him." Dante whipped toward her. "Valentina, what? What are you talking about? You're with me." "Not if there's fraud involved," she said, stepping off the porch. "I'm not ruining my family's reputation for you. I'm not going to prison because you lied to me." "Prison?" Dante's voice cracked. "Who said anything about prison?" Marco lifted his folder. "Forgery, identity theft, financial manipulation, racketeering. Depending on how much you deny, the penalties only get worse." Valentina didn't even wait for him to finish. She walked toward the street, heels clicking fast across the pavement. "I'm done, Dante. Figure this out yourself. Get back here." He yelled after her, but she didn't turn around once. Lucia's car was parked at the curb. Engine started. Isabella hadn't even realized she was there, watching everything. When Valentina slipped into the passenger seat, Lucia drove off without a word to her brother. Dante shouted something at the empty street, something ugly and desperate, but the sound only scattered into the wind. Isabella stepped down one stair, just enough to stand level with him. Her purse hung at her side. The papers were still in her hands, trembling only slightly now. "You ruined everything," Dante yelled at her. "You're destroying my life." "No," she said quietly. "Your choices did that. You can't do this to me. You already did it to yourself." Dante's eyes darted wildly toward Marco, as if searching for an exit. "You set me up. Both of you. You're teaming up to take me down." Marco shook his head. "No one had to set you up. All we had to do was stop protecting you." Isabella swallowed the lump in her throat. This was her moment, the last piece she had to lay down. She handed the confession to Marco. He studied it, nodded once, then looked at Dante. "This seals it." Dante sagged, shoulders collapsing inward. His chest rose and fell too fast. His voice broke into a hoarse whisper. "Isabella, you can't do this. Please, you can't." "I didn't want to," she said honestly. "I loved you once. I tried to help you. I tried to save us. But you never wanted us. You wanted control." He looked up at her with something she'd never seen in him before. Fear, not of losing her, of losing everything else. Marco stepped forward. "Dante Romano, you are legally barred from stepping onto this property. The sale is complete. My attorneys will contact you about the federal investigation." Dante stared at him, shaking his head like he could deny his way back into the world he burned. "This can't be happening." "It is," Marco said. Isabella took a slow breath, her voice softened, not with pity, but with clarity. "You threw me away. You told everyone I was replaceable, disposable, but I wasn't the one who needed a new life. You were the one who couldn't survive without tearing mine apart." Dante opened his mouth. No sound came out. Marco nodded toward the steps. "Time to go." Dante's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. His gaze drifted from Marco to Isabella, lost, cornered, furious, defeated. He took one step back, then another. He looked like a man who had never imagined he could lose. And Isabella looked like a woman who finally understood she had already won. Dante walked down the path with uneven steps. When he reached the sidewalk, he turned around one last time, face twisting with disbelief. This was my empire. Isabella didn't look away, not anymore. Marco waited until Dante got into his car and drove off, slow, dazed, like someone steering through fog. The street fell quiet again. Marco turned to Isabella. "You handled that with more strength than most people I know." She let out a shaky breath. "I didn't feel strong." "Strength doesn't mean not being scared," he said. "It means doing it anyway." They stood in silence for a moment. The brownstone behind her felt different now. Not a cage, not a battlefield, just a place she had survived. "Is it really over?" she asked. Marco nodded. "As over as it needs to be. You're protected. The sale is legal. The documents are secure. His actions are documented and traceable. You're free." She closed her eyes, letting the words settle over her like warm air. Free. She hadn't felt that since the day she married him. Marco handed her the final sales statement. "Your share will be transferred by the end of the day. Use it to start fresh." She took the papers with both hands. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," he said. He said, "Thank yourself. You made the call. You signed the papers. You chose to walk out." He gave her one last nod and left. When his car disappeared down the street, Isabella stood on the porch alone. The access codes dangled from her hand. The temporary ones she still had until she turned them over. They clicked softly against her palm. She looked inside one last time, not with sorrow, with closure. People think the quiet ones break easily. People think the discarded ones stay small. People think the soft-spoken never fight back. But they don't see the storms brewing in silence. They never do. She stepped inside, took one last walk through the living room, and opened the back door to let the late afternoon breeze drift through the brownstone. It carried dust, memories, and the last pieces of who she used to be. She smiled, not wide, but real. Then she whispered the truth she'd earned, the truth she lived to tell. Sometimes the empire you thought you built alone was never really yours to begin with, Isabella said as she closed the door behind her. And sometimes the woman you threw away is the one who rewrites the ending.